that's a good song for the sermon this morning. The sermon this morning is actually going to end up being two sermons. We've been doing this series on finding answers to tough questions. It's called Asking for a Friend, and you have been sending in questions, and I'm doing my best to try to answer some of those. Don't know what's going on with that. Okay, so Ephesians chapter 6. Verses 10 through 20. So if you got a Bible, go there. Ephesians 6, 10 through 20. This is the question that was sent. Actually, there were two questions that are both connected to the same verse. So we're going to take those together, one this week, one next week. The first question was, who are the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places? The second question was, how do we put on the full armor of God? So we're going to combine those two. They're both questions from Galatians chapter 6, verses 10 through 20. So we'll read that. Finally, I'm reading from the English Standard Version, by the way. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, having done all to stand firm. Stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness. As shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Praying at all times in the Spirit, with all prayer and supplication, to that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplications for all the saints, and also for me, that my words may be given to me in opening my mouth boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that I may declare it boldly as I ought to speak. So the question this morning is, who are these spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places? Well, it's categorized four ways: against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. So the very simple question, the very simple answer is, it's the devil and his angels. And I have no idea what just happened there. So, okay, we're back. So it's the devil and his angels. And as we talk about this morning, I just don't want you to grasp who it is. I also want you to kind of grasp what they are doing and what is going on. We're not trying to define here four different categories. So if you look at that list and you say, well, rulers are one thing, authorities are one thing, cosmic powers of the present darkness are one thing, and spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places are another thing. So what are the differences between all of those? You miss what Paul is trying to say. He's not giving you four different categories. He's giving you four different descriptions as exactly the same thing. The devil and his angels in the world, they are rulers, they are authorities, they are cosmic powers over the present darkness, they are spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. So we're not going to break that down and say, well, this group does this, and this group does this, and this group does that. Not like that. It is the devil and his angels who are having their impact in our world. Now, remember, as you think about those things, they all fall under the schemes of the devil. The core part of the passage here is not these four things. It's there are these schemes of the devil. And as we battle against the schemes of the devil, the battle's not against flesh and blood, it's against the schemes of the devil. And the schemes of the devil exhibit themselves in rulers, authorities, cosmic powers over the present darkness, spiritual forces in the heavenly places. Now, before you go too far down a path, rulers doesn't necessarily mean earthly rulers, and authorities doesn't necessarily mean earthly authorities, although they can influence those individuals. And we'll talk about that as we go through. This idea of rulers, there's this passage that says that God has seated Jesus at his right hand far above all rule and authority and power and dominion. Now that's really important. Far above all ruler, power, authority, and dominion. No matter what we talk about today, when we talk about spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places, there is one who has power over all of those, and that is Jesus Christ. All things are subject to him. So when you talk about these, don't think, okay, we're talking about equal planes here, because we're not talking about equal planes. We're not talking about equal possibilities. The rulers, the authorities, the cosmic powers, the spiritual forces, all of those exist because Jesus allows them to exist. You know, probably the description in there that is the hardest one to translate is cosmic powers. Some other translations use, let's see, my mind just went totally blank. All right, there's cosmic powers. World rulers is what some translations use there. It's a real interesting word. It only occurs here in the New Testament. It's made out of two words. One means cosmos. You know what the cosmos is, right? It's like this everything, which is why the English Standard has cosmic. It's cosmos and power. They're people who have, or things, or people, but spiritual beings who have power over the cosmos, power over whatever God allows them to have power over. So sometimes we say cosmic powers. You might have a translation that says world rulers. There's another word that's made up of this idea of power and all, and it means all powerful, and it is only ascribed to God himself, who is the one who is all powerful. So what do we do with those kind of things? Does it mean that there are certain beings who have authority over certain parts of the world? Sometimes people go down that path when they look at these passages, and I don't know the answer to that, to be very honest. I think what we remember is our battle is not against blood and flesh. Our battle against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places, whether they're rulers, authorities, world rulers, or spiritual forces of evil. Here's the point. Satan uses all of those things as his weapons in this warfare against Jesus and his church. God will blind the minds of unbelievers. Satan's darkness will blind their eyes. He'll corrupt their hearts. He'll corrupt their minds. Whatever he can find to use as an enemy of the church, Satan will use that as an enemy of church. That's why our battle is against spiritual forces. It's not against blood and flesh. There is this battle that is going on, and what Satan wants to do is destroy your spirituality, destroy your spiritual peace, destroy you, and lure you away from Jesus. That means we see things through a different lens. We see things through a different set of eyes. We look out in our world, we might see somebody who is trying to, for example, to destroy Jesus and his church. As we look at that, we see the true battle. The true battle is not with an individual. The true battle is a spiritual battle that we face. In fact, those who oppose the church, knowing that it's a spiritual battle, seeing what is actually happening in our world, we should be the ones who are trying to rescue them, not trying to destroy them. Because we see the battle is not against individuals. It's not against blood and flesh. Even those who battle against the church are influenced by Satan and his demons. I mean, they're not without excuse because they make choices. But you start to look at ways that can exhibit itself in the world. So some of you out here have this little piece of paper. If you have one of these, hold it up. Anybody filling out one of these? All right, Sadie Bug, it's me and you, girl. All right, I know there's some others out there. There we go. There's one out there. So who are the spiritual forces of the evil and 4 categories of Satan weapons? Did y'all get that? We're good with that? All right. How do you see evil influences in the world? Let's just take a couple of quick biblical examples. Okay, so if you're looking at question 3, I'm going to give you 5 examples. You don't have to write 3 down, okay? Do you remember David and Goliath? Anybody remember that story? I mean, everybody that's gone to Sunday school has heard the David and Goliath story, right? Were there any spiritual forces of evil going on there? Was there any battle going on in the background? Was that just David and Goliath? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. What was happening there was the struggle between God and those whom he had called. And you say, well, was Goliath? Goliath makes choices. Do you remember the story about Joseph? Remember the story about Joseph and you remember Potiphar's wife? Was that just attraction between 2 people or one person for another? Was there something going on in the background there? There was. It's the spiritual forces of evil, just like there is a battle going on in the background of your life, whatever it is that you're struggling with and whatever it is that you're fighting with. Daniel was taken into captivity. And you remember they were going to give him the choicest food, right? We're going to give you the very best stuff so we can make you strong. You remember what Daniel said? How about if I just forego all of that food and I'll just eat some vegetables and I won't defile myself? And he ended up being stronger. Was that just a choice about food? No. It wasn't just a choice about food. It was a choice about honoring God. And there was also a choice in the background of all of that, of this spiritual force that's going on in the world. Barnabas sold a field. And Barnabas brought the money and he laid it at the apostles' feet and they distributed it to everybody as they had a need. Ananias and Sapphira went and sold a field. Except they didn't bring all of the money. They brought part of the money. Now, were they wrong because they just brought part of the money? Don't shake your head like this. No. The problem was not that they just brought part of the money. The money was theirs to give to God if they chose, right? What did they do? They lied about it. They said, we brought all of the money when they didn't bring all of the money. The problem was not that they kept back part of the money. The problem was the lie. But do you remember what the text says? The devil entered their heart. Just a question about money? No. There's a spiritual force of evil going on in the background there. There are those who deserted Paul in his ministry. And he says this about him: their teaching will spread like gangrene. Among them are Hymenaeus and Philetus, who have wandered from the truth. They say that the resurrection has already taken place, and they destroy the faith of some. Those that oppose Paul in his ministry. Is there another struggle going on in the background? Yes. And the struggle is the spiritual forces of evil. See, the battle there is not just flesh and blood. It's just not that there were people who were opposing Paul. It was why they were opposing Paul. It wasn't just that they didn't bring all of the money. It's the concept, the lie that they told to say that they did bring all of the money. The struggle with Joseph and Potiphar's wife and what happened there. And Joseph in his godliness, you remember, he ran away. But the struggle there, was just there was physical attraction. There was a battle going on beyond that. It's the battle for people's souls. And that's the battle that we're involved in. And I want you to know that as you look at passages like this, you have to remember that Satan is very much active in our world. Just some verses. The prince of the power of air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience. The prince of the power of air? Who do you think that is? It's the devil. Satan. The prince of the power of air. The spirit still at work in those who are sons of disobedience, those who are not obedient to God? Yes. Yes. There's this great passage in Daniel chapter 10. Daniel is in prayer and he's going to see this vision. And man, this is one of those passages, I'll be honest with you, just makes me scratch my head and wonder, what in the world is going on? So, the angel, Michael, is coming to give encouragement to Daniel because of his prayer. And he says, the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia. And you think, what in the world is going on in that passage? So there's an angel who is coming to strengthen Daniel, But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood an angel for 21 days. Now, I don't know kind of how you think about tech. That had to be some kind of fight. I mean, if you can withstand an angel, so this prince of the kingdom of Persia, does that mean that every kingdom has a prince? I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't think so. But I do know this, that even in that moment in Daniel's life where he's in Persia and he's praying and he's getting instruction from God and he's getting encouraged by God, there's this battle that's going on in the background. Paul, writing about those who do not believe in Jesus, he says, in their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Is that battle still going on? Is there still a God of this world who is blinding the minds of unbelievers that keep them from seeing the light of the gospel? And the answer to that is yes, it's still happening. And as we look at that, we realize something. Our battle's not against flesh and blood, is it? It's not against those who have been blinded. Our battle is against the one who is blinding them. Our desire for those who are being blinded is that they be rescued. And the reason for that is because we have been rescued. Because He delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son. And so you have been rescued out of the darkness. I have been rescued out of the darkness. Those who are believers in Jesus have been rescued out of the darkness. But still there is, I love this passage in Revelation, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. Now, an incredibly apocalyptic book. By the way, that's one of the answers if you're filling out this sheet here. That great apocalyptic book, which is wonderful, by the way. What is it that the devil is doing? He's leading the whole world astray. And that is what he still does. He leads the whole world astray. And he does it by authorities, and he does it by these this description of authorities and rulers and cosmic powers and spiritual forces of darkness. And if you realize that, you realize one thing, and that is you don't have the ability to fight him by yourself. You don't have the ability to stand up to that on your own 2 feet. So you put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand. Now, let's keep it in context. What are we standing against? The devil's schemes. Those plans that he has to lead you away, the falsehood that he represents. So what are the rulers and the authorities and the cosmic powers and the spiritual forces? All of those are designed. They're all tools of Satan as he tries to deceive you into following anything other than God. So Satan uses governments, laws, and ungodly leaders to attack the church. He has, and he always will. Now, let's just stop and just be very honest, right? Does that mean every government is ungodly? No. Why do we have governments? And boy, this would be a whole sermon in itself someday, but God set up governments so that the message of the church can spread. Does it mean every law is an ungodly law, that every law is a tool of Satan? Absolutely not, does it? But does Satan use law sometime in our world as his tool? Yes, he does. Does he always use, is every leader ungodly? Greg, you put ungodly leaders. You mean every leader? No, I don't mean every leader is ungodly, but I know that that Satan will use the things of this world to attack the things of the church. Now, is he worried about the nation? No. What is Satan fighting against? He is fighting against the mission of Christ in this world to save people and give them eternal life through the name of Jesus Christ. That is what he is fighting against. It's not about the nation or the government or the law. He's using all of those things in an attempt to drag you, to pull you away from God. And does sometimes that exhibit itself through blood and flesh? Yes, but our battle's not with blood and flesh. He'll blind their eyes to truth. He'll convince the world that the enlightened way is not a godly way. He'll use self-absorption and greed, self-indulgence. He'll make people be hungry for power. And in some cases, those that he uses in the world probably won't even realize that they are being used by God for a purpose. The king of Assyria probably didn't understand he was being used by God to bring judgment on Israel. King of Babylon probably didn't understand that either. Cyrus probably didn't understand that he was God's instrument so that they would go back and rebuild Jerusalem. World rulers who had things going on, they probably had no idea how God was really using them. And it's probably the same in our world today. But our battle is not against flesh and blood. Our battle is a spiritual battle against the forces of evil. So Satan will come along and he'll mix just enough truth into something to make it appear plausible. Have you ever found that a distorted truth is always a little easier to believe than an outright lie? You just mix enough right in it that it sounds okay. Like you go back to those two that were opposing Paul, Hymenaeus and Philetus. They didn't say Jesus wasn't resurrected. Remember, their teaching was going to spread like gangrene because they were saying that the resurrection had already taken place. It wasn't that they removed the resurrection of Jesus. They just distorted the truth about the resurrection of Jesus. They didn't say, oh no, Jesus wasn't resurrected. They said, oh no, we've already been resurrected. And so it's the misrepresentation of the truth. And that's what Satan will do with us. He'll give us just enough truth with some error so that it sounds like it's right. And I know that we stand and sit in places like this and we say, man, we can always pick out what Satan is doing. But Paul writes about false teachers, and he says, for such men are false apostles, deceitful workmen, masquerading as apostles of Christ. Masquerading as apostles, masquerading as the good guy. And listen to this verse. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It is not surprising then if his servants masquerade as servants of righteousness, and their end will be what their actions deserve. But how does Satan masquerade? As an angel of light. Is he going to appear as Satan? Oh, no, he's going to try to appear as something good or something godly or something righteous or the right decision or enough justification that we can get to the right decision. And in all of that, he promotes this trust in the flesh. If you'll just trust in the world. But knowing this true battle, we know we can't trust in the world. We know that the ideas and the thoughts of the world are distorted. For as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live when you followed the ways of the world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. Now, I want you to just stop and listen to that verse for a second. Where did we used to live? We followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air. See, we followed that, but we've been rescued from that. All of us lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. And like the rest, we were by nature objects of wrath. See, we were engaged in that struggle. We understand that Satan and his desire to pull people away from God and what he's capable of. So those with the Spirit of God have a unique spiritual insight into what is happening in the world. Remember that the next time you turn on the news. The next time you turn on the news and you start to listen to all of the stories, I don't care who you're listening to, whether you're Fox News or CNN or somebody else, it doesn't matter where. The next time you turn on the news and you start to hear all of the stuff, and I've heard some of you, man, I just don't know what to trust in the news. And I hear your struggle with some of that. But the next time you sit down and you listen to that, where's the real struggle? See, the real struggle is against the rulers and authorities, the cosmic powers, the present darkness, spiritual force of evil in the heavenly places. That's where the real struggle is. And it gives me this unique insight into the world. Because what I see going on in our world is it's a conflict that's much, much larger than just what seems to happen in the news or in a political statement. There's this battle that's raging, and the battle is the devil trying to destroy anything that has to do with the church. That's the battle. The battle's not about your income tax. It's not about your health. The battle is about your soul. The battle is about your eternity. The battle is about what is going to happen to you when this life is over. The battle is about what will you do with your life in this world, and will you honor and give praise and glory and honor to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Now here's the incredible thing about the battle, because next week we're going to talk about how you put on the full armor of God and what that means. Who wins the battle? Come on, guys, y'all know this. Who wins the battle? God wins the battle. Has he already won the battle? The battle is won. Is the battle for your soul won? Through faith in Jesus it is, right? Are you going to be victorious? Yes. Why? Because of faith in Jesus. Because Jesus died for your sin on the cross. He was buried. He was resurrected on the third day, and he sits at the right hand of the throne of God making intercession for you. The battle is already won. But we live in a world where the battle's ongoing. And you look at spiritual forces of darkness, you look at the devil's role in this world. And I mean, you can ask all kind of theological questions about that, and maybe we'll get into those one of these days. What I want you to know this morning is that I want you to have victory through Jesus Christ. We might have followed the ways of the kingdom of this world at one time, but through Jesus, every sin is wiped away. Every sin is wiped away. And you say, well, Greg, I still got, every sin is wiped away. Through faith in Jesus, even when I mess up in the future, will it be wiped away? It'll be wiped away. How about the battle for your soul? Our life is hidden with Christ in God, which means it's completely safe. Completely safe. Because of our faith in Jesus Christ. Don't lose sight of the real battle. And that's what Paul's trying to tell you in Ephesians chapter 6. Don't lose sight of the real battle. Don't lose sight of what's really going on. You need the full armor of God, because you can't withstand Satan on your own, because that is where your battle is. Your battle is the battle for your soul. And don't lose that battle. By faith in Jesus, which is confession, repentance, baptism, godly living, win that battle